They smile when you speak, but many cheer inside when you break. That's the hard truth nobody wants to admit. The world isn't always kind, and not every ear you speak into is safe. The moment you start sharing your pain with people, thinking you'll find compassion, you're unknowingly handing them ammunition. They will not always use it to heal you. Some will store it, some will wait, and some will smile while secretly celebrating that you're not as strong as you pretend to be, that you're human, that you're bleeding, and suddenly your pain becomes their entertainment. Not everyone deserves access to your pain. That's a hard truth most people learn the painful way. We live in a world that encourages openness, transparency, and vulnerability, but what it doesn't warn you about is how dangerous it can be to expose your wounds to people who aren't equipped to handle them. The moment you open up to the wrong person, you risk turning your suffering into a spectacle. Your story, which you shared hoping for comfort or understanding, can be twisted, mocked, or used against you when it falls into the hands of someone whose intentions are not pure. And the worst part is that you might not even see it coming until it's too late. People are skilled at pretending to care, wearing masks of empathy, and asking the right questions while secretly feeding on your pain like it gives them power. That's why it's critical to understand the weight and worth of your experiences. Your struggles are not just stories, they are sacred chapters of survival, and not everyone has earned the right to read them. There are people who will smile at you while secretly rejoicing over your pain. They won't show it on their faces, but inside, your suffering makes them feel superior. Your vulnerability reminds them that even strong people like you can bleed, and for some, that's all the satisfaction they need. They don't want to support you through it. They want to see how much more it will take before you finally break. When you give these people access to your inner world, you're not just sharing information. You're surrendering power. You're allowing them to hold pieces of your identity, and if they're the wrong people, they will misuse it, they'll gossip, they'll judge, they'll distance themselves and talk behind your back, not because you did something wrong, but because your truth made them uncomfortable or gave them something to use as leverage. The mistake many people make is believing that if they share their pain, they'll feel better. And yes, sometimes talking does help, but only when the listener is safe, mature, and wise enough to carry what you've shared with respect. Most people, however, listen not to understand, but to respond, to compare, or to secretly feed a narrative they've built about you. So you must ask yourself, why am I sharing this? And is this person truly worthy of my trust? Because once your pain is out there, you can't take it back. And when it's in the wrong hands, it can do more damage than the pain itself ever did. Your silence is not weakness, it's wisdom, it's strength. Choosing not to speak doesn't mean you're bottling things up. It means you're protecting something valuable. It means you're not desperate for validation. It means you understand that your healing is not a performance and your journey isn't a public show. Some things are meant to stay between you and God. Some things are meant to be wrestled through in private, in tears no one sees, in prayers no one hears but heaven. That's where true power grows, in the quiet places. And when you finally emerge stronger, wiser, more focused, people will wonder how you did it. But you won't owe them an explanation because you didn't share your process. You simply showed up transformed. Not everyone deserves access to your pain because not everyone has the capacity to treat it with honor. Your life, your heart, your healing, they are priceless. Be selective with who you trust. Learn to sit with your feelings long enough to understand them before handing them to someone else. Build your strength in silence, and when it's time to speak, you'll know who's earned the right to hear your truth. Until then, guard your soul like it's treasure, because it is. Healing comes in silence, not exposure. That is a truth that many never grasp because they confuse attention with transformation. In a world where people are constantly encouraged to share every moment of their lives, every heartbreak, every wound, every disappointment, it feels almost unnatural to keep your pain private. But real healing, the kind that transforms your soul and gives you true strength, doesn't happen on a public stage. It happens in the quiet moments when no one is watching. It happens when you sit with your pain instead of running from it, when you surrender it to God instead of feeding it to people who can't understand it. Silence is not empty, it's sacred. It's where clarity is born, where divine wisdom speaks, and where your spirit learns how to stand again. When you expose your pain too soon or to the wrong people, you delay the healing process. Because what you're really doing is seeking comfort, not restoration. Comfort is temporary. It makes you feel good in the moment, but it doesn't rebuild your inner foundation. Restoration, however, requires depth. It requires silence. It requires you to wrestle with your thoughts, to confront your fears, to cry without an audience, to bleed without applause. That kind of healing can't be rushed. It can't be broadcast. It's personal. It's sacred, and it's yours. People don't always realize that every time you talk about your pain, you're reopening the wound. You're reliving the experience. And sometimes by giving it too much airtime, you're keeping yourself emotionally stuck in a moment that's already passed. You're reinforcing the narrative of what happened instead of rewriting a new one. Silence gives you the space to step back and see things differently. It allows you to observe, reflect, and understand what the pain was trying to teach you. When you're constantly talking, you're reacting. But when you're quiet, you're listening. To God, to your intuition, to the deeper part of you that knows how to rise. And in that silence, something powerful begins to happen. You stop needing people to understand you. You stop craving validation. You stop replaying conversations looking for signs that someone cares. Because in the stillness, you realize you were never alone. God was always there, and He doesn't need explanations. He doesn't need details. He knows your heart, your battles, your scars. And He heals not by giving you applause, but by filling the places in you that were emptied by pain. That kind of healing cannot be outsourced. It must be cultivated in solitude. When you heal in silence, you come back stronger. You come back wiser. You come back with clarity, peace, and confidence that isn't dependent on what anyone else thinks. And when people see you again, they won't know what happened. They won't know the nights you cried, the prayers you whispered, the strength it took to keep going. They'll just see someone who glows differently, someone who walks in quiet power. And that's the beauty of silent healing. It speaks loudest without ever saying a word. So resist the urge to expose your pain for sympathy. Don't confuse temporary comfort with real growth. Choose depth over attention. Let your silence be the sanctuary where God restores you. Let it be the space where you rediscover your strength and rewrite your story. Healing doesn't need witnesses. It needs intention. It needs patience. And it needs you to trust that what's happening in private will one day manifest as power in public. Not because you showed your wounds to the world, but because you allowed them to turn into wisdom when no one else was looking. Your scars are meant to empower you, not define you. They are not signs of failure. They are proof that you survived battles others couldn't even imagine. Every scar you carry is a testimony, a silent declaration that pain came for you, but didn't win. The problem arises when people begin to wear their wounds like name tags, allowing their past to become their identity. They become known by what broke them instead of what built them. But your scars are not meant to keep you in the past. They are meant to propel you forward. They're reminders, not prisons. They're not here to shame you. They're here to show you that you've already walked through the fire and you're still standing. You don't need to keep rehearsing the pain to feel strong. Your strength is already proven in the fact that you made it through. So many people carry shame about their past, about what they went through, about how they broke down, about the mistakes they made in moments of weakness. But what they fail to understand is that scars are not flaws. They are marks of growth. Growth is messy. It's uncomfortable. It's not clean or predictable. Sometimes it looks like losing everything. Sometimes it looks like walking away when no one else understands. Sometimes it looks like crying yourself to sleep while pretending you're fine in the daylight. But every time you chose to keep going, every time you refused to stay broken, a new scar formed, not to remind you of pain, but to honor your resilience. That's power. People might see your scars and think they know your story. They might think they can sum you up based on what they've heard, what they've seen, or what they think they understand. But the truth is, they weren't there in the darkest moments. They didn't feel the weight you carried. They didn't see the nights you wanted to give up, but didn't. They don't know what it took for you to get back up. And because of that, their opinions are irrelevant. Your scars are not for them. They are for you, to remind you of who you've become and what you'll never go back to. You are not your pain. You are not your trauma. You are the result of overcoming it. When you begin to see your scars as sacred, everything changes. You stop hiding. You stop shrinking. You stop living in defense mode. You start to walk in your truth, not as a victim, but as a warrior who made it through something heavy. That's a shift that few make, but it's life-changing. Because when you no longer carry shame about your past, you stop needing people to approve your present. You live free. You speak boldly. You lead others not with perfection, but with authenticity. That's the power of scars. They give you depth. They give you compassion. They teach you how to recognize pain in others, not to exploit it, but to speak life into it. Never let anyone use your scars against you. Don't let them try to box you into old versions of yourself that no longer exist. You've grown. You've changed. You've healed in ways people can't see. And that healing wasn't loud, it wasn't glamorous, but it was real. You fought for it, you cried for it, you earned it. So wear your scars with pride, not as signs of weakness, but as evidence that you are unstoppable. And every time you doubt yourself, every time you feel like the past is creeping in, just look at your scars, not with regret, but with reverence, because they are not signs that you were broken. They are proof that you were built. Oversharing invites misunderstanding and judgment. Many people fall into the trap of believing that the more they talk about their struggles, the more others will understand them or feel connected. But what often happens is the opposite. When you share too much of your pain with people who haven't earned the right to hear it, you open the door to confusion, misinterpretation, and criticism. People begin to form opinions not based on who you really are, but based on fragmented moments of vulnerability that they were never equipped to handle. They take a snapshot of your struggle and try to make it your whole story. They reduce your complexity into a label. Suddenly, you're not the strong, resilient person you are. You're the person who always has issues, always complains, or can't get their life together. And once that narrative spreads, it's hard to reverse. You may think you're building connection, but oversharing often breeds distance. It overwhelms people who don't know how to respond or support. It invites them to give unsolicited advice, to compare their pain to yours, or worse, to judge you in silence while pretending to care. And then you're left with the bitter taste of betrayal or confusion, wondering why you feel worse after opening up. That's because not every person is a safe space. Not every ear is meant to hear your heart. Some people will never be able to see past your problems because they don't have the depth to understand your process. And the more you talk, the more they define you by the pain you shared instead of the strength you carry. In the search for empathy, you may end up fueling gossip. What was meant to be a cry for understanding turns into a conversation piece behind your back. People will repeat your words, strip them of context, and use them as entertainment or as leverage in moments of conflict. Your vulnerability becomes a weapon in someone else's hands. And you'll begin to notice how differently they treat you, not because you've changed, but because they now see you through the lens of your struggle, not your strength. That's the cost of oversharing. It doesn't just expose your heart. It gives people a story to run with, a version of you that may no longer exist, but now defines you in their eyes. You have to protect your story like it's a treasure, because it is. Every detail of your pain, every moment of your process holds weight. It carries lessons and power, and it shouldn't be handed out freely. Think of your story like a seed. You don't throw it on concrete and expect fruit. You plant it in good soil. The same goes for your words. Share them where they can grow, where they'll be met with wisdom, understanding, and care. Don't try to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Don't try to gain approval from those who haven't even earned your honesty. Your story is valuable, and you must be selective with who gets to hear it. Oversharing doesn't make you more relatable. It can make you more vulnerable to the wrong attention. It doesn't always bring connection. It can create emotional confusion. Learn to differentiate between the urge to share and the need to be seen. Sometimes the validation you crave from people can only be found in God, in stillness, in writing, or in the quiet strength of processing alone. Talk less about the pain and more about the growth. And when you do speak, let it be intentional, not emotional. Let it be from wisdom, not impulse. Because once your words leave your mouth, they belong to the world, and the world doesn't always handle them with care. Discipline and restraint are signs of true strength. In a culture that glorifies expression and immediate reaction, the person who can hold their peace, who can suffer in silence, who can control their emotions and keep their battles private, is often misunderstood, but never weak. It's easy to rant when you're angry, to cry in front of anyone just to feel momentarily seen, to scream your frustrations to the world hoping someone will care. That takes no effort. What takes real power is choosing silence when your heart is heavy, choosing to walk with dignity when your name is being dragged, choosing to pray instead of posting, choosing to heal instead of harm. That's discipline. That's the kind of strength that builds unshakable character and long-term respect. You learn quickly in life that your words have weight. Once spoken, they can't be taken back. And in moments of pain, anger, or despair, you might feel compelled to pour it all out, to vent to whoever will listen. But not every emotion deserves an audience. Not every feeling should be expressed. When you lack restraint, you become vulnerable to manipulation, to misunderstanding, and to regret. But when you have discipline, when you learn to sit with your emotions instead of being ruled by them, you build a level of internal power that no one can touch. You become the kind of person who others respect, not because you speak loudly, but because your silence is loud enough to command attention. It's not about being cold or detached. It's about being strategic with your energy. You begin to understand that self-control is not suppression, it's wisdom. You're not avoiding emotions, you're managing them in a way that protects your peace. That's what discipline does. It helps you pause. It gives you space between feeling and reacting. It allows you to weigh the cost of every word, every confession, every emotional outburst before you give it life. And that pause, that's where strength lives. That's where clarity emerges. That's where you stop being reactive and start becoming intentional. There's a rare kind of beauty in the person who has been deeply hurt, but remains composed. The one who has every reason to lash out, to explain themselves, to expose others, but chooses not to. Because they're not driven by ego, they're driven by purpose. They know that energy wasted on proving a point could be energy used to build a future. They know that silence is sometimes the sharpest response, that walking away with grace speaks louder than any words ever could. And that kind of quiet strength, it shakes people. It makes them wonder what you're building, how you're still standing without having to shout. Discipline teaches you that not every emotion needs to be seen. Not every struggle needs to be announced. That sometimes the greatest form of power is in what you don't say. The restraint to hold your tongue, to wait until your emotions settle, to process in prayer or reflection instead of in conflict. That's what elevates you. That's what keeps you from becoming a slave to your circumstances. Because the moment you let your emotions control your actions, you give away your power. But when you master restraint, you hold on to it. You walk in authority, not chaos. You move in silence, but with precision. You become dangerous in the best way, unpredictable, focused, unshakable. In a world that demands instant reactions, be the one who masters the pause. In a culture that glorifies oversharing, Be the one who guards their soul. Let people wonder what's on your mind. Let them guess how you're handling it. Let them be stunned by how calm you remain under pressure. That's the kind of strength that doesn't just get noticed, it gets remembered. And it's forged not through noise, but through silence, discipline, and the quiet decision to remain in control, no matter what. Let your results speak louder than your pain. In a world where many are addicted to being seen and heard, there's something undeniably powerful about a person who chooses to stay silent through the struggle, but lets their success tell the story. When life knocks you down, it's natural to want to explain, to justify, to let others know what you're going through. But at the end of the day, people remember what you built, not what you endured. They may listen to your complaints for a moment, but they will respect your outcomes forever. That's why you don't need to announce your suffering to the world. You don't need to justify your silence. You don't need to defend your breakdowns. All you need to do is rise quietly, strategically, consistently. And when you do, let the transformation be so undeniable that no one can question what you've overcome. Pain doesn't need a microphone. It needs purpose. If you channel your energy into constantly telling people how hard life is, you get temporary attention. But if you take that same pain and use it to fuel your growth, your discipline, your focus, then one day the same people who didn't take your struggle seriously will have no choice but to respect your strength. They won't be clapping for your sadness. They'll be applauding your comeback, not because you cried the loudest, but because you moved in silence and rose when no one expected you to. That's what real power looks like. It's not always in your story. It's in your result. It's in who you became because of what happened, not who you were when it happened. It's easy to be loud in pain. It's easy to cry out, to look for comfort, to vent and scream. What's hard is keeping your head down and letting your work do the talking, letting your discipline carry you when motivation dies, letting your consistency outlast your critics. Because while people may ignore your pain, they can't ignore your progress. You don't need to convince anyone that you're trying. You don't need to beg anyone to understand. Just build, just heal, just transform. And one day, without ever needing to say a word, your life will become the proof that you were never weak. You were just preparing. The truth is, when you let your results speak for you, you take back control. You're no longer a prisoner of people's opinions, their pity, or their lack of support. You don't rely on anyone to validate your struggle because your transformation is loud enough. It's unspoken confidence. It's undeniable growth. And it creates a kind of silence that people can feel when they see you succeed, when they see you rise, when they see you move forward without bitterness or apology. They realize they misjudged your silence. It wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. It was preparation. It was focus. You don't owe anyone a front row seat to your pain. You don't need to convince them to believe in your journey. Just keep going. Let them think you disappeared. Let them assume you gave up. Let them say whatever they need to say, because when the results come, they'll rewrite every opinion that tried to define you. And you won't have to say a word, because power isn't in proving, it's in becoming. And when you become the version of yourself that pain tried to prevent, your success will echo louder than any explanation ever could. Let your silence build the victory. Let your results silence the noise. Let your life become the response that your words never had to make.